Hey everybody, I'm JC from One Shot Adventures, and today I'm going to take you way back in time to give you an overview of the Ice Age Cthulhu adventure, Canyon of the Snow Cairns. This adventure takes a brave band of prehistoric men and women deep into a haunted forest to find their lost chieftain. If you think a regular Cthulhu adventure isn't hardcore enough, wait until you see the horrors that await you 30,000 years ago when all you had for supplies was a stone knife, a wood spear, and a fur pelt. Canyon of the Snow Cairns is available for free at oneshotadventures.com. There are versions available for Call of Cthulhu, GURPS, and even Savage Worlds. It includes pre-generated characters, handouts, and virtual tabletop assets so you GMs can run it without a ton of extra prep. Because it's a sandbox sort of adventure, it'll take players between 1 and 2 sessions to finish, depending on how much they like to explore and take their time with an investigation. Before we jump back 300 centuries into the Ice Age, I'll warn you that there are spoilers ahead. So if you're thinking that playing as a caveman facing off against elder gods sounds kind of cool, and you'd rather play in this adventure, well then turn right around, grab your atlatl, and tell your GM to check out this video instead. Here we go. If you've watched my channel before, you know that I love running Call of Cthulhu style adventures in historical settings. There's something just about the timeless nature about Lovecraftian menaces. After all, elder gods like Cthulhu have been around for millennia, so you can take almost any setting and easily inject that cold and lonely horror that Lovecraft is known for. And what setting is colder or lonelier than the Ice Age? Canyon of the Snow Cairns takes place 30,000 years ago in the Blue River Valley, which is somewhere in modern-day France. This is long before civilization appeared. Cro-Magnons, the ancestors of modern-day humans, roamed the plains alongside the last of the Neanderthals. Technology was virtually non-existent. To give you an idea of how non-existent technology was, the wheel wouldn't be invented for another 25,000 years. How you expect anyone win Call of Cthulhu game with no wheel, broken stick, and no Tommy gun? You let me make one with idea roll maybe? The adventure is centered around the kidnapping of the PC's chieftain, a brave man known as Kusim Aha. He's taken by old rivals into the Forest of Howling Sorrows, a forest that all the tribes in the area say stay away from because it's supposed to be haunted by angry spirits. The PCs will mount a rescue mission into the forest, and they'll discover that the kidnappers are actually worshippers of the dark god Ithaca, and they've discovered a way to bring this chief that they hate so much into Ithaca's home dimension, the cold and alien Borea, where they plan on sacrificing him and dooming his entire tribe, which includes the PCs. So most of this adventure will take place in the forest itself, which is very open-ended and sandboxy. So while I'm going to describe the typical way I've seen PCs explore this forest, keep in mind that your players may do it completely differently. And that's okay, it all still works. The adventure kicks off at the beginning of winter, right at the very end of hunting season. The PCs have cornered an enormous mastodon, Stone Tusks, who is stuck between them and a cliff overlooking a river. One of their poor tribe mates has been injured by the mastodon, and he's moments from being crushed by it. This opening, pitting players against a woolly mammoth, is really just about introducing players to the Ice Age and teaching them that to accomplish anything in this era, they're going to have to work very closely together. Mastodons were these enormous, massive, deadly creatures that took amazing cooperation to take down, and the PCs are going to learn that really fast. They need to use their brains here to save their tribe mate or take down Stone Tusks, or else he's going to make caveman pate out of them. This encounter is purposely designed to be tough for the players who just scream and rush in and attack a woolly mammoth. Hey, it's the beginning of the adventure, and if one of them instantly gets killed by him, well, there's plenty of extra characters to play. Welcome to the Ice Age. Regardless of whether the PCs take down Stone Tusks or they just decide to be cautious and run away and let their clansmen get trampled to death, they're welcomed back at camp. Overall, the hunt was successful and there will be plenty of food for the winter, which is so critical in the Ice Age. But as dusk falls, the clansmen become nervous and worried. The great chief, Kusamaha, as well as his brother, Tensamaha, have not yet returned from the hunt. Because it's getting dark fast, the PCs are asked to join a search party for the two honored brothers. As the PCs go out and explore the darkness, soon they'll hear screams of the chief's brother, Tensamaha. In the dark of the moonlight, they see him lying on the ground, his body pierced by 12 spears, and he's surrounded by these black deer in a perfect circle, but they're all like twitching and spasming in unison. It's like really creepy, and it's going to force them to all make sanity rolls right away. And as the PCs rush to help, the deer suddenly stop moving, and Tensamaha speaks to them as he lay dying. Tensam explains that he and his brother were hunting when they found this group of deer who surrounded them. Thinking that this was a blessing from the spirits, Kusamaha loosed an arrow at the deer, but then suddenly the deer all instantly fell dead and started twitching, and the two brothers were ambushed by wolf-headed men. They struck Chief Kusamaha with a spear and dragged him screaming across the river. And as his brother Tensamaha lay dying, he received a vision from the spirits that if Kusamaha dies, the tribe will not survive the winter. And with that, he pleads with them to rescue his brother. Okay, so what's going on here is this. A couple of seasons prior to this adventure, the PC's tribe went to war with a rival tribe, the Liontails. They were victorious, and the surviving Liontails fled into this forest. The surviving chief of the Liontails, a man named Creel, swore revenge on Kusamaha and the PC's tribe. But in the forest, he discovered that there was an area where the border between our world and the ice dimension of Borea, home of the elder god Ithaquah, was sort of weak. This is why the forest was considered haunted. It was roamed by these denizens of Borea, three-eyed wolves, as well as a GNOPHKEN, an enormous, six-limbed, one-horned, intelligent bear who can freeze people to death just by being nearby. But Creel discovered that as long as he and his friends were wearing the hide of one of these Borean native animals, they could pass between worlds at a certain spot in the forest. And now he plans on dragging Kusamaha into Borea and then sacrificing him to Ithaquah, which he thinks will bring doom upon Kusamaha's entire tribe. It's one big revenge plan that Creel has here. So you can see one of the keys here to this adventure is to make sure your players understand their tribe's history with the Liontails before they enter the forest. Spend some time with them early in the adventure before the rescue mission starts, explaining that war with the Liontails and how much they were victorious in fighting them off and how much their PC's tribe hated these Liontails. And so this will increase the tension when they realize that their old enemies are somewhere in this forest and likely responsible for their chief's kidnapping. And it's very clear right away that nobody was going to want to negotiate with each other because these two tribes just hate each other so much. So that's the situation that the PCs are walking into as they cross the river into the forest looking for their chief. There are 6 main locations in the forest, each one giving away hints as to what's going on. There's an abandoned Liontail settlement where the PCs discover that the Liontails were skinning these strange creatures for their pelts. There's a weird area where Liontails have buried themselves in snow and are like frozen zombies because the more you make trips into Borea, the more it eventually makes you go crazy and crave the freezing cold so much that you'll do anything to like entomb yourself in snow and freeze yourself to death. And there's an ex-Liontail named Nelia who is appalled at what Creel and her tribe were doing and is on the run from him and his cult. And she'll share information with the PCs when they find her, as long as they can convince her that they're trustworthy. After all, they were just at war with her tribe just like a couple seasons ago. Because exploring this forest can be so open-ended, you can run it in a few different ways. If you're just trying to get through this adventure in a single night, then I suggest you just pick a few of the key locations and route your players through them as they go deeper into the woods. Or you can run the entire forest here as like a hex crawl, where the PCs wander in different directions through the map with a chance of getting lost or stumbling across some of the enemies that live in the forest, like the three-eyed wolves or the primitive, degenerate Vormi men who are cannibals, or the GNOPHKEN itself. This method is how I usually run it, and I force the PCs to make like navigation and survival rolls every 12 hours or so to stay on the trail and find food and stay warm, just to further reinforce the harshness of winter in the Ice Age. But you can run it how you want. Eventually, the PCs will discover a key location in the forest, a snowy altar of piled rocks just in the middle of a clearing. The rocks are highly unusual, almost like petrified ice, and they give off a kind of static charge to any of the men who touch it. This is the area where the boundary between Earth and Borea is the weakest. To rescue Kusamaha, the PCs must find pelts of those Borean creatures that live in the forest and put them on, and then when they walk onto this mound, they'll be transported into Borea. So the PCs at some point are going to have to go hunt some of those three-eyed wolves or go after that GNOPHKEN, which is likely stalking them through the forest. He's really intelligent, cruel, and really strong, so taking him down is going to require cooperation. Just like the players learned from fighting the mastodon, right? So once the players have explored all the key locations in the forest, they'll likely realize that their chieftain is in Borea and that they need to gather enough pelts, one for each of them, to go to this mound, enter Borea, and rescue their chief. Borea is this harsh alien world carved from sheets of primordial ice, and not too far from where the PCs will enter this world, they'll find Creel and the remaining lion tails performing a ceremony where they plan to sacrifice Kusamaha to Ithaquah, this god who is approaching the site, much like King Kong approached his sacrifices. So this is the epic finale of the adventure. The PCs are all in Borea, trying to rescue their chief before Creel sacrifices him and before Ithaquah shows up and just blasts all of their sanity into oblivion. Whenever I've run this, it works pretty well. Although the players probably are outnumbered by Creel and his minions, Creel doesn't really expect them to suddenly show up in Borea and mount a rescue. So whenever I've run this, my players always come up with some clever plan to ambush Creel and take him out really fast and intimidate the rest of the Lion Tails. I mean, don't forget that the Lion Tails just lost a big war against the PC's tribe a year ago and are probably pretty skittish about them suddenly showing up and taking out their leader. And then the players usually grab Kusamaha and drag him wounded back to the mound to get him back to Earth, just as Ithaquah is starting to appear through those like icy peaks in Borea. It usually works pretty well, and about half the PCs have always survived this encounter, which is perfect for a Cthulhu game. I mean, welcome to the Ice Age. Okay, I have to share this, by the way. I've run this adventure about 3 times, and every single time my players have completely forgotten to bring an extra pelt with them to bring Kusamaha back from Borea to Earth. It's like after playing cavemen for 4 hours, they've just suddenly forgotten how to do math. But this is always an awesome moment because as the adventure's ending and they run back to the mountain with their chief like on their shoulders, they suddenly realize they don't have a pelt for him, and one of the PCs usually ends up stepping up and sacrificing himself and giving the chief his own pelt and, getting torn apart by the cultists and wolves and Ithaquah just as everybody else escapes.
Okay, everybody, we leave Borea now. You got pelt, I got pelt, Kusamaha got... Oh!
If you've played or run this adventure and had this happen to you, please let me know in the comments below. I think it's a wonderful feature, although accidental, of this adventure's climax. So with a lot of cooperation and a little luck, the players can escape Borea with Kusamaha and flee the forest and return back to their camp. If you're going to game master this adventure, let me give you 3 tips on how to run it like a pro. First, remember it's the Ice Age. Make this adventure tough. Don't hold back with the opponents. Like mercy wouldn't be invented for another 30,000 years, so just make them all really savage and bloodthirsty. Also, Remind the players that survival is a big deal, and they're in the middle of this freezing forest in winter, and if they linger too long, things are going to happen that's just bad. Describe how their flimsy stone weapons might break on a high-impact hit, or how any injury that the players take comes with a permanent wound like a scar or a broken bone that won't heal right. Remind the players that there's no healing opportunities for another 20,000 years. The Ice Age is meant to be gritty, so really play this up. Second, introduce the GNOPHKEN, that's that six-armed bear thing, as a threat early on in the adventure, but keep them in the background at first. So like when I run this, I slowly introduce the GNOPHKEN after the PCs enter the forest. First, I'll make them make perception rolls and they'll see him far away, and some of the PCs may just think that they saw a massive bear, while somebody else saw its one horn and maybe thought it was an elk or a deer, but just confuse them with its sightings early on, so they're not sure what's out there. And then soon they'll notice that whenever he's nearby, the forest gets inhumanly cold, and that'll cue them that something's unnatural with this creature. And then whenever the PCs start to split up, he'll try to pick off one or two of them at a time. And finally, once the PCs have explored most of the forest, the GNOPHKEN will realize that they're thinking about gaining entry into Borea, and he's just going to try to kill them outright. He doesn't want them there around Ithaca, who is his sort of master. Just remember the GNOPHKEN is cruel and enjoys playing with his prey, and he's sentient, and he has this alien intelligence, so just don't run him as a mindless monster. Use him to freak out the PCs until he has the advantage, then he's going to go for the kill. Finally, make sure you run this one with a soundtrack. When I run it, I always use those cold and icy winds like nature sounds as a background for the adventure. It'll just really help set the mood. In fact, while I wouldn't personally recommend this, one GM who ran this adventure wrote me and told me that she ran it outside in the winter, around a fire pit with like blankets for all her players. To you players who actually did that, I salute you. You are as badass and hardcore as the Ice Age itself. Well, that's the summary of Canyon of the Snow Cairns. I always have fun running this adventure. I think that the primitive setting just makes it feel so different from other horror adventures. And that finale in Borea just always creates a lot of panic with my players, and it always plays out in an epic fashion. But if you've played or run in this adventure and have fun stories or any feedback, I'd love to hear about them. Just let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more like it, don't forget to like and subscribe this channel. And remember, you can download Canyon of the Snow Cairn for free at oneshotadventures.com, and there's other historical horror adventures there for you to enjoy as well. Until next time, I'm JC, and just remember, if given the choice between jumping off a cliff and fighting an angry mastodon, choose the cliff every time.